Is this all right where I'm holding the mic? Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It's Born Free here. I am at Evo 2017, the 15th anniversary, and what a great way to start our interviews with none other than the legendary, one of the founders of Evo, Mr. Tom Cannon. How the hell are you?
I'm great, thank you.
This is good to know. Now listen, I want to get stuck in straight away. I've got so many questions for you. I want to go back in time. Evo started in 2002, but I also happen to know that I guess you started B3 in 1996.
Yeah, you know your history, that's right. So the first tournament I ever ran was B3 in 1996. B3 stands for Battle by the Bay, and it was actually kind of a play on E3. So it was like there was E3 down in LA, and we were like, oh, we're going to be B3. And this was 96, so before the World Wide Web, before YouTube, right? And so the way that we would communicate strategy and sort of talk shop over the internet was through Usenet, which is all text. So text-based chat boards. And there was just a lot of miscommunication about like what was good strategy, what was bad strategy. And we formed B3 to get all these salty dudes on the internet together to like hash it out to determine like who was full of shit and who was actually any good.
What? Okay, all right. I actually have a list of questions, but I already have a question which isn't on that list of questions, which is why at that time would you get together and be like, we need to start taking this seriously, we need to start breaking this down? Like, I remember that time, and I remember just thinking, it's a video game, I love it, and it's cool, and I never thought of it in a scientific process. How did that come about?
Well, we were all playing in our individual arcades, and we were all competitive. Sort of the people who had opted into this message board were competitive players, so we wanted to win. And having the ability to talk to people all over the country and compare strategy was almost like a secret weapon, right? So we would learn things from each other online and then take it back to arcades, right? Like I learned Ryu's fireball trap online. But here's where you stand. In 96. And it was so funny because we didn't even have pictures. So it's like, okay, go to Chun-Li's stage and there's a rock, right? Yeah. Put Ryu's front foot right on that rock and like throw a fireball and throw a slow one and then throw a fast one, right? It's like, oh my gosh, now I see. Now I can start to, you know, sort of have this peer group. And, you know, internet access back then was pretty rare. And so it really was kind of like a secret weapon for all of us. Yeah.
So on that, talking of Ryu, let's go back. So before you were a tournament organizer, you were a player.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I played competitively for a long time. Started the original Street Fighter II in 1991. I got the equivalent of what would be a top 8 nowadays in a couple of majors. One in Marvel 3, one in Street Fighter 3 Third Strike. So I was like a pretty good player, not like an amazing player, but I was a good competitive player. And then I got old and slow. And started moving towards, well, what else can I do for
What do you define as old? Because there's still Agawa's coming over, and he's in his 40s.
Well, he's just flat out better than me then. For me, I started losing my touch when I hit like sort of my mid-30s.
Okay.
And that's when it wasn't so much that I got like slower, although I did get a little slower, but you know, it's just real life takes over and you don't have time to really grind out all those practice matches. Okay. My last serious game was CVS 2, and after that I sort of fell by the wayside.
All right, so let's go back to B3. Why did you take it upon yourself to be an organizer of a tournament? Is it in your personality?
I think it is. I mean, I just really like competition, not just competing, but I like seeing what happens when you get a lot of people who all really want to win, and only one of them can win. Right? Yeah. And they all think they can win. And that was so awesome. What was so awesome about the old days was nobody knew who was the best. Like the first time when the USA played against the Japanese team, you know, a few years later, we didn't know. The first time we played Daigo, we didn't know if Daigo was really that much better than us or if we were better than him. And so that's why I really started organizing tournaments. Was, you know, it was the only way to find out. And I love seeing what happens when you get two people. It's like, you know, the immovable force and the unstoppable whatever, right? It's like both these dudes know in their heart that they're going to win, but one of them is wrong. And something about that just human drama is really interesting to me.
Yeah. I was trying to think back to, was it Mike Watson? Who was the Guile Ryu match that was always, that one, I've forgotten who played playing in that match, but it was
Which game?
It was Guile. It was a ongoing Guile Ryu kind of matchup, and it was Mike. I think it was Mike Watson and.
It was probably Mike Watson and Tomo.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Or no, Thomas Sasaki. Okay, so Thomas Sasaki was a Sunnyvale Golfland player, NorCal player, who had an amazing. He was amazing at the game. He had an amazing guile. And Mike Watson was one of the top SoCal players. And Northern California, Southern California had a rivalry that lasted more than a decade. Okay. And there were just a ton of just classic matches. And then it was John Choi from Northern California and Alex Valle from Southern California, who's sort of the next generation in that rivalry.
All right, so let me ask you, B3. I've just been downstairs, right? And Evo, the size of the room is like San Diego Comic-Con. It's that kind of size, which is like it takes a long time to walk from one end to the other, like a long time. You have to factor that in. How many of the original, how big was the original B3, like space-wise? What was it? Where did you host it?
The B3, original B3 was held in an arcade.
Okay.
And it was not a big arcade. It was, gosh, how to describe? Well, it was an arcade. So we had like 64 people in that tournament. And we packed that little arcade with 64 people. And we continued running tournaments in arcades. After B3, there was B2, which was on the East Coast. It was called Boston Brawl. And so that's the sequence goes B3, B2, and then B4.
Okay.
And then after B5, so we did 4 tournaments all in arcades. And at that point, it was getting harder and harder to run a tournament in an arcade.
Yeah.
Both because we were getting more people and because the arcades, unfortunately, were starting to go under. And that's when, after B5, it became clear that we just can't do this anymore in arcades. And that's when we sort of rebranded what we were doing to Evo with the idea of, okay, let's take what's awesome about what's going on in arcades with Street Fighter and Tekken and all these games and put it in a form where it can like survive the death of arcades.
And when you put Evo together, did you guys have a vision, and what was it?
It was that. It was strictly that. It was like, okay, this thing that we really love, which is just the arcade scene, right? A bunch of people coming together on common ground. Everybody's an equal, and the way you find out who's the best is you play it out, right? That's what was so incredible about the arcade scene. And that was going to go away. It was going to be gone, wiped from the face of the earth, because arcades were closing if we didn't do something about it. And so the sole purpose of Evo was let's take what's awesome about that and put it in a new form where like it can survive the inevitable death of arcades.
Okay, and the first Evo was in Vegas?
Oh, no. The first Evo was at, I think, a ballroom in UCLA.
Oh, okay.
We were on college campuses for about 3 or 4 years.
Oh, yes, of course.
As we sort of learned how to run an event. And then we came to Vegas, I think in 2005 was the first year.
Okay, so when did you think, was that the first year where you thought, this is a big deal?
The first year where we thought this is a big deal was in Evo 2004. Not surprising, Daigo Perry moment.
Okay.
Where we made a lot of mistakes when we were just building up Evo because we had to make a lot of changes. We had to figure out what's going to be a compelling event if you don't have the draw of the arcade, right? And so we started experimenting with like side events, and that's where the BLYOC came from. And that's where actually the top 8 format came, where we were thinking, okay, if we make Sunday like a show that's worth staying for, then maybe people will actually come to this event even though it's not in an arcade. But we screwed up so many times along the way trying to figure out that formula.
I wanted to, actually, that's one of the questions I wanted to ask you was, what are some of the things that you had to overcome? Like, what have been some of the major issues over the years?
Yeah.
Are there any that stand out?
Well, by far the number one is moving the console.
Okay.
Because at the time there was a standard equipment, and it was the arcade cabinet with a perfect 360 joystick, right? And that's the only piece of equipment that every player in the US at least had ever played on. And when we said, hey, we're going to go to a port of these games, which is 99% accurate, but it's not 100% accurate, there's subtle differences, and now the equipment isn't standard, you sort of have to bring your own joystick. And joysticks weren't very easy to come by back then. That was a
I've seen
big
those,
change.
Yeah, I've seen those videos, big old
like
joysticks and tables and all sorts.
Yeah. So figuring out how to effectively run a console tournament and sort of winning over hearts and minds that, yeah, it's not exactly what you're used to, but it's still worthwhile. That was by far the biggest challenge.
Wow. let me ask you this: was there ever a point in Evo's history where you guys were like, "Let's pack it in"? Like
Yeah, yeah, actually. So Evo 2004 was at Cal Poly Pomona, so it's a university campus,
Yeah.
and there was a lot of flat out shady stuff that happened this year. We had like,
Oh, really?
yeah, well, yeah, we had nothing like with the tournament, but like extracurricular activities. Like we had people like doing like cash poker games and stuff like that.
Okay.
And security basically practically came like a hair's breadth away from closing the event. And at that point, it was like, this is just really, really tough. And it was, myself and Tony and some guys like James Chan and Tragic sort of tanking this. And that was the year where Mr. Wizard started getting involved.
Okay.
And he took a big load off of us and sort of carried the ball into 2005, where he was like, okay, we're going to go to Vegas, we're going to change some things up. And that was really instrumental in taking a little bit of the load off of like me and Tony. So we had like another great partner. And that pushed Evo into sort of the modern version of what you see it as now, right? So without Mr. Wizard, like for sure, Evo probably would have just gone by the wayside in the mid 2000s.
Okay, so Mr. Wizard came in. That's and helped you guys turn it into what it is now. Was there a point where you went? I know it was. It feels like it must have always been a passion project. It must have been years where you were probably losing money, and then there must have been a turning point where it started to become more like a business.
Yeah.
Was that a weird feeling, or was that a good feeling? Like what? Because obviously it's a great thing to be able to do something that you're passionate about, and
right,
make money out of it as well.
Right. So the thing is, it goes back to the mission. So the mission was preserve what's awesome about arcades, and so our operating, I guess, budget for Evo has always been what we made from the last year, right?
Okay.
Our philosophy has always been. We're going to be self-sufficient. We're going to be player-run and player-funded, so that we're always in control of our own destiny, right? We're not going to rely on like venture capitalists or some giant sponsor to come in and drop a bag of money, because if the bag of money goes away, then like it's the end of the story, right? And so it's been just like 15 years of slow organic growth, where like we sort of, we take whatever we make from the previous year and roll it into next year's budget, and that's how you go from like a 64-man tournament in an arcade to a ridiculously sized ballroom on the Las Vegas Strip. Yeah. Bit by bit, you're sort of growing your war chest and turning things around into a bigger tournament for the next year. Where we started to have like a little bit more flexibility in terms of like doing things that were just awesome on top of what was necessary, like a little bit more production, sort of the bigger screens, like this giant like sort of widescreen thing that we had in Evo 2014. That started happening in the middle of the Street Fighter 4 era, where like say like 2010, 2011, where we had finally gotten like enough people attending the event where it's like, okay, now we actually have a little bit of a slush fund where we can do some of the fun stuff. And that was actually, you're right, it was a really great feeling, because it was we weren't fighting for survival anymore.
Yeah.
We were choosing like, okay, what are the things that we're going to do that are really going to be awesome for players?
Okay, that makes sense. And Street Fighter 4 must have been a blessing.
Yeah,
for everybody.
oh, absolutely. Street Fighter 4 was amazing for the whole scene. The 2 years that stick out for me as far as Evo goes is 2004 because of Daigo Perry. Yeah. And that's when like we had like the reaction we wanted, that we were going for like 3 or 4 years. We tried to get that reaction of people just going ape shit over like a console tournament.
Yeah.
And so that's why Daigo Perry was special for me. And then 2009, where we just had a huge flood of people, and the excitement around Justin Wong versus Daigo finals in Street Fighter 4, the very first finals we had, was on another level. And that's where it was kind of like, okay, something's different about what's going on now.
The 2009 finals stood out. They were amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. They were so hype. A new game, him changing characters. The whole thing was just so good. Daigo in his prime. It was beautiful. It was beautiful. I loved it so much. And made me want to come in. The first one I came to was 2011, actually. I wanted to ask you a few more questions about Evo and then talk to you about the FGC in general. But what's the vision for Evo? I know there's an Evo Japan in terms of expansion. but I'm also interested in what I'm seeing downstairs, because I remember in 2011 thinking there's not enough merch. I want to buy stuff, and downstairs looks like a Comic-Con. And then, of course, another thought occurred to me is that when is a fighting game not a fighting game? Like, where do you draw the line? Like, do you want to be a dream hack? Do you want to have every game? Like, what's the vision for Evo?
Yeah. So the vision is really, it's a celebration and kind of family reunion of the fighting game genre, right? This is the one time where you can go to a con, if you want to call it that. It's a tournament, but you're right. It's starting to bring in kind of con-like aspects. But you come here and you know that everyone around you is into this one particular kind of game, right? That isn't, we're not the biggest genre around. FPSs are bigger, MOBAs are bigger. But like, you come to Evo and everyone around you has this very specific passion. It's the same as yours. And so that's what we want to preserve. And so, yeah, there's kind of gray area about what's a fighting game. Like Pokken sort of pushes those boundaries, I think. There's always a conversation about Smash. But we will always be about fighting games. And
what's the weirdest game that you featured in Evo over the years?
That's easy. It was one of the Mario Karts. So there was
yes. Oh my God,
right.
That's so funny.
Yeah, there was a year where
How did that happen?
So there was a year where we were sponsored by Toyota Yaris. It was our first non-endemic sponsor, so it was kind of a big deal. They were really helpful in sort of getting us on our feet. But as a car sponsor, they were like, "Hey, can you have a racing game there?" And we were like, I guess. And so we did Mario Kart, and it was fine, but it was just it didn't fit, right?
Okay.
And so yeah, like, you know, do we want to be like a dream hack where we have all these other games, FPSs, MOBAs? No, we're always going to be about fighting games.
Okay. Okay. Now, I have a dumb question. Maybe I'm outside of the loop and I don't understand, but why is Evo 37 called Evo 30? Why is Evo Moment 37 called Evo Moment 37, and where are the other 36 moments?
There are other ones.
Are there 36 though?
Yeah. One of them was Sumighty doing a ridiculous combo in
Were they on like a video or something, or a DVD or something?
Well, there are 36. So the real answer is we call it Evo Moment 37 because if you saw that, you would get the impression that there were 36.
It was marketing.
Yeah, it was marketing.
I knew it was marketing.
Yeah, it was like, oh my gosh, this kind of thing must happen all the time at Evo. It's like, no.
Genius. That's genius.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's so funny.
It was just marketing.
All right, I wanted to ask you another question about spectators versus. So it's when you think about attendees for Evo. I guess there's two questions wrapped in one. So we'll talk about the numbers because people expect me to ask that question for sure. Because Evo has been growing every single year, and then last year was a blockbuster year with Street Fighter V, and then this year everyone's looking at the numbers and going, I don't know what to make of this.
Yeah.
And then the other thing, I guess, is those numbers are for players. And I guess my other question is, is there a trend, is there or is there not a trend for like more just spectators?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. Like, that's really interesting to me. Like, is this something that can be turned into a kind of like primarily a spectator event? You know, I hate to use the word sport. It's not my favorite word. Sports is not my favorite word. Athletes is not my favorite word. People know this, but like, you know, it's not like everyone who watches NFL plays NFL every Sunday. Yeah. You know.
Yeah. So
talk to me a little bit about the numbers and then also the spectators.
Right. So there was just last year was a spike for us. Absolutely. There was just a tremendous excitement around Street Fighter V, and there was a perception. I think this is fair to say that like Street Fighter V had the potential to catapult the scene in a similar way that Street Fighter IV did. And I think that's why we saw such a huge rise of attendance that year. Now, for whatever reasons, you know, Street Fighter V hasn't done that, and so we're sort of coming back down to earth with this year. But our Street Fighter V tournament this year is bigger than the biggest Street Fighter IV tournament we've ever had. So if you look at the graph, I think we'll see continued steady growth, but we'll see this giant spike, which was an abnormality in 2016. So the way that it turned out, we're pretty pleased with the numbers. We're going to have a lot of people. This is our biggest venue, and it's going to be, I think, pretty packed. Hopefully not as packed as last year because we will have fewer people, which is actually kind of a good thing because we're kind of squashed in sardines, like sardines in the convention center. So that's the numbers. Yeah, it's down, but the trend line I think is there's a lot of reason for optimism.
Okay.
As far as spectators, we're not trying to make this event for spectators. We're really making it for people who play.
Okay, because of the mission.
Yeah, right. The mission is like, let's get as many fighting game fans, and the fighting game fan is usually a player, right? Or they used to play or something. Someone who's interested in the competition. Let's just make, your home where you can come every year and connect with your tribe, right?
Okay.
That said, we are seeing more spectators come every single year. Yeah, in fact, we didn't even offer the option to spectate, come as a viewer and not as a competitor until I think 4 years ago was the first year we did it. And we were surprised by the number of people who were interested in doing that. So it's something that we will continue to make available for people. I think, when we're experimenting with ideas about how can we do things that's good for competitors, and it's also good for spectators, like moving to an arena.
The jump off with Chris.
The jump off is another one. Actually, so the jump off is a cool idea by Chris Seglia this year, where it's basically a table of analysts who are just going to be talking you through all the awesome things that are happening on the Evo floor regardless of game, right? So if there's a cool moment in Smash or a cool moment in Marvel or something, they'll say, oh, here's this match, let's look what's going on, here's what's happening in the bracket. It's a great idea. We're going to be streaming it, but we're also going to have that set up on the show floor with some seating, right? So if you're a casual fan, or you're a spectator, or you're a player and you just want to take a break because you need a break, you can just sit there and just sort of take in almost like a guided tour of what's going on in Evo right now. So really excited about that. Yeah, I don't think our focus will ever be Evo as an event where you come and watch. We want Evo to be an event where you come and play.
Okay, that makes sense. I want to talk about the FGC. We'll come back to Evo actually, because I have more Evo questions. But the FGC itself, because I know that you're clearly, I've seen a few tweets by you. You're not a big Twitter guy, but I've seen a few tweets by you with statistics in them and things like that, following trends, and I'm sure you very much got your finger on the pulse in terms of the FGC. I feel like the FGC this year been a bit of a mixed bag in terms of there's people just bickering and warring over particularly Capcom games.
Yeah.
There's celebration of some new games that have come out. There's celebration of games that are coming out. There's also some hate being thrown towards some games that are coming out. Everybody's extremely vocal, and to me it feels like this year more than ever. What do you? It's a bit of a wide question, but how do you feel about the state of the FGC at the moment? Do you think it's in a good place, or it's going through some growing pains, or what's going on?
Well, I think there's some reasons for people to be a little bit disappointed, but this is part of a natural cycle that happens in the FGC. Okay. If you look at the transition from Street Fighter 4 to Street Fighter 5, the first version of Street Fighter 4 was not amazing. It had some rough spots. Balance was pretty bad. In Capcom, over 7 years, I think it's 7 years, refine that game to a mirror finish, where by that last grand final, where unfortunately Game Review lost, that game had been battle tested by the best players in the world for years and years and years, right? And you're not going to match that level of polish and perfection out of the gate with a new game. It's just not going to happen. But that was what the perception was, that Street Fighter V was not just going to be as good as Street Fighter 4, but it was going to exceed Street Fighter 4. And there was no way that was going to happen. So we're feeling the hangover of that. So I think it's natural maybe for people to be a little bummed that the reality is okay, we have a new game, we have to adjust to it, and the game will get better over time. But there is something else that's going on, which is I think trolling and negativity has somehow become fashionable. And it's very easy to say, oh, this is trash, this is terrible, and to get a lot of upvotes or a lot of retweets. And that's a little disappointing. I'm not sure what the solution is. But I know that when you go to events, and I was at Combo Breaker earlier this year, you don't see that. You don't feel it, right?
Mm.
I see the same smiling faces, you know, awesome competition, great spirit of the FGC that I've always seen. That to me is just as strong as it's always been. And you mentioned, like, I don't do a lot of social media. For me, that doesn't really matter. It's very easy to make a troll account and sort of spread out hate or negativity or whatever else, right? What really matters for me is when people play, are they playing with the right spirit? Are they playing to get better? Are they playing like to connect to their peers? Are people still going to events? And when people go to events, do they have a great time? And all that is still true. So I just try to tune out the negativity and keep doing what we're doing, right? And if Evo numbers like started to go down, or if we started to see you know, some of that negativity spilling into like in-person events, then I would be really concerned about that. But that's just not what I've seen at all.
Well, yeah, there's a huge difference between social media and seeing people in real life. When you see people in real life, people, you know, the events when people get together, the energy is.
It's almost like using
thing.
Twitch chat is like is the FGC in trouble if Twitch chat is poison? No, Twitch chat has always been garbage, right? And it's kind of known. It's like, okay, Twitch chat's going to be garbage, and let's just like celebrate that Twitch chat is garbage. I think that's spilling over into other forms of social media, and it's not great, but it's not real either. Like what's real is like, you know, what happens when people get together and play.
Okay. So you think the FGC is it's okay? You know, it's a natural cycle, and you know.
Look, we saw the same thing when Street Fighter 4 came out. We were transitioning from CVS2 in Third Strike to Street Fighter 4. And there was some initial disappointment around that game too, right? We saw the same thing with Street Fighter 3. It's a natural cycle. It's just there's such a magnifying glass on what's going on because things are bigger now. And whereas before we'd have 20,000 people tuning into Evo, now we have 200,000 people tuning into Evo, right? And it's very easy to say, oh, Street Fighter 5, you're not as good as version 6 of Street Fighter 4. It wasn't going to be as good. It's never been the case, right? So yeah, it's part of a natural cycle.
All right, so let's talk about happier things.
Oh, good.
I wanted to know, do you have any, like a favorite Evo story? I know you have a panel. And you probably have a few.
I do have a favorite Evo story. It's a long story.
Okay, let's not do the long story.
All right.
Let's do you have the weirdest moment that's ever happened at Evo?
Here's a pretty weird one. It's not very exciting, but it is weird. I think it was Evo 2012. It was 2012 or 2013. We were at Caesar's Palace. And it was a particularly stressful year because it was the last year before we moved to the pool system, which meant that we were running brackets of like hundreds and hundreds of people. And so it was a terrible system for players because you'd play a match and then we'd say, oh, you're playing your next match in like 4 hours, right? It was bad. So we were under a lot of stress. The schedule was very tight. And that was the weekend when President Obama decided to visit Las Vegas for some fundraiser, and they closed down the strip. And so we had like hundreds of players who were on the other side of the strip who literally could not cross the street to get to the venue for like 2 hours. And it was just kind of a thanks Obama moment. I think maybe my other favorite moment is when we had Flo play Dan's game live on stream. Are you familiar with Dan's game? Yeah. And we had the developer make a special build just for Evo. And I don't know if Flo knew this, but in this build of the game, it could be controlled remotely to change the thing up on the fly. And so, you know, there were a lot of, anyway, it was like a 2-hour like just troll fest of Flo being trolled over and over again. And that was sort of a Thursday night special thing we did. That was a lot of fun just because it was so weird, because it was just sort of, let's celebrate what a crazy dude Flo is.
Yeah, he's good at those games as well.
Yeah.
He's great at those video games. I wanted to ask you a little bit, let me ask you a question I ask absolutely everybody because it's now become the most traditional question that I ask.
Okay.
Who's your favorite player to watch right now? And you're not allowed to remain neutral.
I can't remain neutral. That's tough because
You're supposed to remain neutral, but like I can see you're trying to remain neutral.
yeah.
But I'm saying right now. I'm not saying all time. I'm not saying last year.
All right. Right now, it's Snake Eyes.
Okay. Tell me
because
why.
I feel like to be perfectly honest, I feel like he finally like figured out that he's a Zangief player and went back to his character.
Okay.
Right, and it's like it's great to see someone. I mean, that's his identity, right? And I had the same sort of reaction when Daigo went to Ryu, or no, to Yoon. He went to Yoon in sort of the later stages of Street Fighter 4 when he was a Ryu player, right? Now he's a Guile. That's another story. But I thought Snake Eyes was a huge surprise in the Street Fighter 4 era with Zangief, right? And I missed that character, not the character of Zangief, but the character of like, here's kind of someone who's picked an offbeat choice and is actually doing really well with it, and is just like Snake Eyes and Zangief are like, they're synonymous almost.
Yeah.
And I think that that kind of persona was missing from Street Fighter 5, and so I just love that he's having success now.
I love it when a player becomes a character.
Yeah.
Daigo becomes Ryu, Momochi becomes Ken, and Snake Eyes becomes Zangief.
Yep.
I guess I probably have run out of questions. I do have a cheeky question for you. Actually, I have two questions for you. First one is not a cheeky question. The second one's a cheeky question.
Okay.
First one, well, what do you like to do? What else are you into? Like, what's the Tom Cannon? Oh, everybody knows Tom Cannon, the fighting game guy, who has done so much for the FGC over the years. Your list of achievements and contributions is kind of ridiculous. But what else are you into? Is there some stuff do you have any other kind of like, I guess, hobbies or passions, or is it being a family man?
It's really being a family man. Like the FGC is my hobby. So my job is, I've always been involved in tech.
Okay.
So first I did a lot of, I guess, exciting for me, but most people would consider boring business tech as a software engineer, and now I make games. And so my hobby has always been event organizing and the FGC and things like that. Beyond that, I guess my new non-optional hobby is being a dad. So I've got a 7-year-old.
Okay.
And he's awesome. It's great to see like little people just develop. And he's a really great kid. He's into everything. He's into games. He's into like baseball. He really wants to play football, and so I'm trying to figure out if I really want to let him play football, because I don't want to have his head crushed in.
Do you want him to get into fighting games?
No, I don't.
You sound like the boxer. Whenever they ask boxers, like, do you want your kid to box? No, I don't.
I want him to get into whatever he's into. If he wants to get into fighting games, that's totally cool, and I'll teach him. But I don't want him to get into fighting games for the same reason that I got out of fighting games, because like he's got the same quality that I have, which is when you get into something, you really, really want to win, and
Okay.
it takes such a commitment to be good at these games, which is why I have such admiration for the guys who can stay at the top for a long time, like Valle, Justin Wong, now Daigo. Now we're looking at the new generation, like
What Punk and
it's going to be really interesting to see what Punk can do.
Yeah.
I mean, Punk is like super hot right now, and he's like kind of on another level. Can he sustain that? That's going to be the interesting part. And so, like, I want him to he's 7 years old. I would like him to play the field, try lots of stuff, right?
Yeah.
And then see what he's into, and then make a decision. So I'm not trying to railroad him into fighting games or anything else.
Okay. Now you're a game developer at Riot, right?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I'm probably not going to be able to get you to say anything about what's going on there. All I know is you're a game developer. all I know is you're a game developer at Riot, and you like fighting games, and you did make Rising Thunder.
Yeah.
Is there anything you can reveal in regards to is there any time in the future we will hear something about what you're working on?
I can sum up, this is all stuff that's already known, but just to sum things up. Yes, I work at Riot, working on video games. We're in a new office in the San Francisco Bay Area, so if you are in the Bay Area and like to work on video games, check out our careers page. We are hiring. And the point of my office is we work on incubating new stuff, right? So no, I don't work on League of Legends, right? Yeah, so Riot has been great. It's been an exciting ride. Sort of founding my own company was incredibly humbling and exciting experience, and now it's great to have the support of a big established company that just wants to make incredible games. So I'll let you know when there's something worth sharing.
Well, the truth is, I could talk to you forever about all sorts of things. Historical game development, I'd love. I could do a whole interview with you about like what a game developer's doing right and wrong in your opinion. That would be wonderful to hear. But we only have so much time. So I think my last question is kind of cheeky. I think I'm not sure, but I've been told not to reveal my source. But what is Pound Capcom?
Oh, that's not a secret. That's not cheeky at all.
That's not secret?
It's an IRC channel. Yeah.
Okay.
So like it's just an IRC channel, and it gets a reputation of being like the secret channel because it's not really publicized so much, but it's pretty boring.
Okay.
So IRC for the kids is like Slack or Discord from like the 1980s, right? So it's just text chat, and it's a bunch of Capcom fans usually talking about things other than fighting games.
Okay, fair enough, fair enough. Is there anything you wish that I'd asked you? Any topic that you wanted to talk about? Anything you wanted to say?
Who are you most interested in talking to here? What player?
Nemo.
Really, why?
Because I want to ask him about Marvel, and I would be very interested to know if Nemo says, I played it and I loved it.
Oh, you want to ask him about the new Marvel?
Yeah.
Infinite. Okay.
I want to be like, hey, Nemo. I'm being very truthful right now, but like I want to be like, it's going to be a blow up either way. Like it's interesting to me because like I played it and I quite honestly had fun with it, right? There's loads of stuff which I have a problem with, absolutely, but like played it, had fun with it, right? And Nemo, if he does, I don't think but I think when I interview him, he might not have had the chance to play it. But I would love to know his thoughts on that. And also, he seems like a bit of a character. And Evo is one of those few places. I think he only ever really travels to Evo. I don't think I think of the players that are coming here, there's Nemo. I think Ogawa. Galileo, there's a bunch of different players who you'll never see anywhere else, and that's one of the things obviously that makes Evo very special. And for me, being given the opportunity to come interview here, I'm looking at players who, those are the ones I'm excited about, are players that I'm likely never gonna see again.
Sure, you should mic him up and interview him while he's playing.
Oh, Nemo? yeah, that would be amazing. But I think we'd need like a translator. Like,
yeah.
It probably wouldn't work so well. It'd be great for the Japanese though. But yeah, absolutely. But thank you for that question. I don't often get questions. Okay, well, in which case I would just like to say thank you. It's been an honor meeting you and talking to you. There's a lot of stuff there that I really didn't know. I love the mission. It's the mission statement for Evo. I didn't know you have one, which was in regards to the arcades, was it?
Yeah, it's preserving arcade culture.
Preserving arcade culture.
Yeah.
I love that. And I think we'll sign out. So we'll just say goodbye to these guys.
Bye, guys.
Bye, guys. All right, perfect. Thank you so much, Tom.
You're welcome.
Awesome. I had a lot of fun.
Yeah, me too.